Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our policy committee meeting with you. At this point in time, we're gonna turn this over to Mr. Edwards, our deputy superintendent, and we will deal with 1.01.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. So 1.01 is kind of a non-traditional way of approaching a policy. So I want you to be aware that the shared decision-making team for the district and our shared decision-making plan requires an opportunity for teachers to have a voice in making recommendations for policies, CFCA members, as well as the NEPA members. So we met a few weeks ago and we reviewed 3 policies. Policy 5205, which is credit recovery. Policy 5205, which is credit recovery and accrual. Policy 5695, cell phones and other devices.
Sorry.
And the last policy was
5201.
secondary course credit, I thought.
Yes, 5201.
5201.
Right. So, Ms. Nabaki,
I don't even know where it is.
can you go back up?
It's all over.
I just, if you just let it go the way it's.
Okay, perfect.
So, as the committee met, some of the overarching themes that we saw for each of the policies are shared with you, and they were shared with you yesterday. So 5205, there was some people in the room that just said scrap it and start it over, all the way down to a lot of people wanting some inclusion of other items. So this is just a summary of the collective bargaining review for each of the policies. So we go to the next page, please. Next page. Yep. 5205. Now, again, very different from with the way we would review a regular policy, because this is, I think it's really critical that you see what the teachers wanted and what the other individuals in the room wanted, and then what was Dr. Campbell's recommendation as a result. So the red line documents that you see here was what the University Teachers Association felt they would like to see in a change for this particular policy. So what I did was, wherever they had a change, I added a number. So they recommended number 1, number 2, 3, and so on. Can you go to the next page? Keep going. I'm just going to show you how we did this. Keep going. Keep going. And then we took each of those recommendations from not only the Newburgh Teachers Association, but from the summary sheet in the beginning, which included DASA and CSEA. So for each number, I gave you Dr. Campbell's recommendation. So for number 1, which was identified on the previous page, we agree with that recommendation, which was just to change the secondary course credit the credit recovery policy to grade 7 through 12. Minor change, we are in agreement. Again, the second recommendation was again to make it more specific with grade 7 through 12, so we agreed with it. Item number 3, which, can you go back to the document? So item number 3, the Newburgh Teachers Association representatives were requesting that we take that line out. Dr. Campbell and the team feel we would like to leave it in. Your thoughts on that?
Board members, Mr. Lamar. Questions, comments?
They have not, they want it taken out.
Yes.
So this is giving them an opportunity to take a course in credit recovery that they have never taken during any normal school year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Part of it, yes. They have not taken the required course or have not acquired the credits they need for graduation. So yes, you're right. But
If they have not taken the required course, I don't think they should be
Okay.
Ms. Peterson? Is your hand up?
So in certain situations, and I'm sure Mrs. Farrell will say that, students that are in high school may not be scheduled for the course. If we remove this, we wouldn't allow them another means to earn credit towards graduation.
So we would hurt the student. Mr. Lamar?
I personally think our job is to make sure the children are educated, not graduated. So if they're taking a few weeks of a quickie online, credit recovery plan, I don't think that educates them. I think it gets them a credit towards graduation. I don't think that should be the goal.
Mr. Nance?
I think you have to give kids all the opportunities that they can. And it's not that they're not learning this stuff, in credit recovery. They have a curriculum that they've got to be going through. There's a course that they're taking somehow, either online or, after school or wherever. So, my feeling is we should leave it in.
Okay, so I have a question. So Ed,
Mhm.
so this is a scenario where, let's say, a senior, he has not taken this course, but maybe credit short of graduation.
Mhm.
And he or she would be able to take that course in credit recovery to have them to qualify for graduation. Credit accrual, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, accrual.
They would earn that credit. So let's say, for example, I got to the second semester and I sat down with my guidance counselor and we said, oops, I'm missing a half a credit and I need this half credit course. So by offering an opportunity for a student to take a credit accrual course, it would allow them to satisfy the standards and the requirements of that course through taking a credit accrual course, and be able to graduate. Otherwise, they would have to wait for that course or a similar course that meets the criteria they need for graduation in order to satisfy the graduation requirements.
Any other questions, comments?
I have questions about the credit accrual program, I guess. Whether or not is this like, is this an intensive, for example, you take a college course that's a summer school course. You do 5 weeks and it's like 4 hours a day.
Intense.
Right. And that's different than, whatever the full semester is, 1 hour a day, twice a week, 1 hour. Yeah. What's the structure of this program? Are they getting the content or are we just sort of rushing through it? I don't mean to suggest anything. I just think that's my hesitation on any program like this.
There's criteria for a course to be approved by the district, as well as following the commissioner's regulations to offer that particular course. That student must demonstrate the same level of proficiency that they would in a full year or a semester-based course. And we have to have the evidence to back up that we provided the instruction and the student learned that information. I'll defer to Ms. Peterson or Dr. Farrell.
I would concur with Mrs. Forget. Additionally, in terms of you dealing with college credits, that would not be a course that we would be interested in nor support for credit accrual under this situation. There are different structures that are imposed upon the student from college that we would not be able to carry out in summer.
No, I don't mean that. I'm just saying, for example, in order to, I digress, but I think I get where you're at.
More understanding? I think, Mr. Bear.
So I'm gonna clarify, the regulations require internationally prescribed hours for half credit, full credit.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
54 hours for half credit, I believe, 108 for full credit. I think that's the numbers that
That's-
are required.
That's good information. Thank you.
And you can't shorten it.
Okay.
Those hours must be dedicated.
And is some of this available to be done online or is all this got to be in person?
Well, that's another question that's down further in the conversation.
So number 3, are you okay with taking that in? Mr. Lamar?
Yeah, for now,
Okay.
So 3 of 3. Thank you. Item number 4, again, was just plugging in grades 7 through 12. We're in agreement with that. Item number 5, grades 7 through 12, we're in agreement with that. Number 6 was a grade change agreement, and also remove the word credit, replace it with the unit, because we're talking about middle level. So that's 6. Item number 7. Stop me if you want. Item number 7. Student participation in the credit recovery program shall be approved by a school-based panel consisting of, at minimum, the principal, the teacher of record for the subject area for which the student must take up credit, the student's school counselor, and the director of guidance or another administrator. We're in agreement except for we have to remove the director of guidance director of guidance or other designated administrator, like that removed. So we agree with their addition, except for we want director of guidance or another administrator taken out.
Madam President.
I'd like to leave in other administrator. What happens if the principal is not available?
Then I would like to recommend principal or designate.
I'll accept that.
Mr. Lamar.
Just curious, what's the reasoning for not putting in counselor and director of guidance? Just trying to simplify the process?
The counselor is there.
Because the school counselor is there and the building administrator is there, I think it would be duplicative if you had the director of guidance there. We already have a guidance counselor that's representing the course of study for the students. So you have a building principal that's delegating and approving the course of study.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, go ahead. Mr. Forger.
Sure. Number 8, again, high school students in grades 9 through 12. We're in agreement with that. Item 9, ESYT, we're in agreement with that. Now, item 10, there's a request to take out digital learning. We just came through a pandemic. We just had a lot of things that we were addressing. Removing that option, I think, would be a possible detrimental to the academic program in the school. So we are not in recommendation of removing digital learning in item 7. Onyx, you want to comment as well?
I think that we definitely support digital learning. Currently, we are not utilizing digital learning in programs. I think that there has to be structures which are outlined here. There is access to different programs and availability. So if a student needed to recover or even expand what they are learning, because we're talking about a curl. So if I was a student and I had an opportunity, if we take this out, we're not going to be able to give that instruction. State aid or state education department also does give opportunities with digital learning or distance learning. So we want to make sure that we are not taking away opportunities from our students for that.
Mr. Lamar, questions, comments?
What kind of a structure would the digital learning plan be? I mean, are we putting this in here just so we have the option, or do we have an idea of what we want to do?
But within the policy currently right now, it does outline some components of what we would have to put forth in a program. So it has to be rigorous. It provides documents. Most digital learnings that are approved by the state programs have to be aligned to state standards. So they're not outside of what's the word I'm going to use? They're aligned with the state curriculum and the state standards. So that's a part of the program being rigorous. Currently, I know that there was talk before of how it could be used as a resource, but the district has not explored those things. Also, with certain situations within our home tutoring lens, when students are, we want to make sure that we have that option. Because there are some times where students need to, have that as a resource. So if we take this out, how would they be able to access that? For home instructions, I have a student that's medically ill, or if I have a student that is out of school for disciplinary reasons. If I take this out, I'm not going to have that option.
Well, we can specify that. I mean, we could put that in written just the way you said it, if we needed to. I mean, that's an option.
Are you okay with leaving it in?
I think there needs to be some sort of parameters on it. I personally, I think some kids will probably say, and I'm a big proponent of making use of online. We had the pandemic, we had to figure out how it worked. Things were figured out, and I think we need to use.
So what kind of
we learned.
parameters are you referring to?
I don't know. I mean, I just think that leaving it wide open where the kids can, I mean, in theory, we could set up something that, I don't know. I mean, what, if I don't know what the digital learning plan would be, then I can't speak to whether I like that. I just think it leaves it open for a lot of, again, something that's maybe not quite as rigorous as it should be and is easier at home to, you know, fudge on it, I guess.
Madam President.
I think we should leave it in. Large school districts like New York City has just put this into the teacher contract, that digital learning will be one of the ways that they're going to be working with students in the future. I think it's an option that we need to keep in to give us alternatives as the educators and to give students the alternatives as learners.
I agree with that. Ms. Lamar, are you okay with this? Dr. Kate?
I think one of the safeguards in this policy and then the use of digital learning is the fact that our district still has oversight of how the program is structured, how the program is delivered, the quality of the program, and assurances that we are following all the necessary guidelines. We are still ultimately responsible regardless of the tool that we use. So whether it's digital or in person or another online type of vehicle, we are still ultimately responsible for the quality of those assurances to not only our students and their parents, but also to our board.
And are we talking here about a link to a teacher in a classroom, or are we talking about a program that we would buy?
Both.
Both.
Or a combination thereof.
I would be inclined to say no to the program that we buy and yes to the, you know, give the kid a link to the classroom that the other kids are sitting in. If for whatever reason, like you said, the child can't be in the physical setting.
But many of the online platforms, and I think that this is what Dr. Farrell is speaking about in terms of the oversight of the program. Most of the programs are attached to a certified teacher. So, and some of it, you know, it's a curriculum that is based on New York State standards. In some cases, the district has the ability to adjust the curriculum that is taught, and those programs are attached to a certified New York State certified teacher. So I think that oversight that Dr. Farrell was speaking of, it allows the districts to ask those types of questions. And it's really responds to the first bullet of the policy and whether or not it's rigorous. Whether or not the program that we are choosing is rigorous and is aligned to state standards and curriculum.
Support you.
Yeah, and I just one point of clarification. So we're not saying this is the opportunity for a student to dip their toe into a classroom that's being taught to in-person instruction. This is separate and apart from that. This is credit recovery and accrual.
And that particular one is credit. Recovery.
It's both actually.
No, the next one, number 11 is.
I'm sorry, yes, the next, it's gonna be the same thing. Yes,
So,
This is credit.
board members, are you okay with leaving it in, Mr. Lamar?
I still would prefer not having a program such thing. And maybe I'm just visualizing the wrong thing. You know, in my mind, I'm seeing industrial films that I have to take tests for my job, and it's keep clicking until you get it right. I mean, and that's really what I see. And I mean, is the kid gonna fail? Here's a question. On these kind of programs, if you take a test and you don't pass,
Yeah.
you just take it again or not?
Dr. Farrell.
Most of the programs, and certainly any program that we would entertain or that I would bring forward for recommendation, and I certainly, as Ms. Peterson will, are rigorous in that there are assessments built into the programs. Students have to master the material before they can go forward with the digital learning. There are checks and balances. There are teachers with records reporting the progress of the student with us to the district if it is not indeed our own teacher involved in it. And the content is closely aligned to state standards and state assessments and requirements for mastery.
Does that satisfy your question?
Oh, I got,
And many of the, I didn't catch many of the learning components that come with these new instructional technology. Students have a certain time that they must be a part of the lesson. They're not allowed to move on until they have mastery. They have to, you can't just skip to the test. It's not structured that way. They have to be a part of the content. They have to, understand certain things, like, so if there's a video, they can't just not watch the video. Like, it's structured in a different.
And you
different
only
way.
have a certain number of tries before
Yeah.
they
Yes.
back you up again.
Before they back you up, and you've got to start over or consult with
all right,
the instructor. It's not the click, it's a very structured
All right.
program.
So,
if that's the way it's structured, I feel better about it.
okay, the only reason I keep asking for consensus is that as a subcommittee, when it goes forward to the board, you know, we have three people that understand and we've agreed so that when we get out there, that's three votes. That's why I keep wanting to get clarity and answer your question. So you're good with it?
I'm more comfortable with it than I was before, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. King.
Item 11. So just go back a tiny bit. Thank you, Mona. So credit accrual options may include, this is what Ms. Liao was asking me to share before. I just didn't want to go out of sequence. Credit accrual options, we should really help me for that. Credit accrual options include independent study, summer school, evening high school, Saturday school, and district learning. So those are the options in the vehicle by which a student can accrue credit for a course. We prefer not to take the digital option out.
So this is repeat of the previous.
It's the same thing.
Okay,
For accrual versus recovery.
okay, Mr. Lamar.
Again, you know, I still have some hesitation, but I feel, like I said, I feel better than I did a few minutes ago.
Okay, thank you, Madam President.
I'm fine with not taking it out.
I'm fine with not taking it out. Next item, Mr. Porter.
Sure. We are now on to the next policy. Keep going there, Mom. Keep going, keep going. Next one, stop. So cell phones. So the teams met and they made some recommendations for consideration of adjustments for the cell phone policy. So the first request you see in front of you. We are so the only request that the senior team felt was also include the name word staff, not just faculty. It should be faculty and staff.
Okay.
And we're in agreement.
And then what about the next piece that's been read after getting feedback from faculty?
And staff.
and
Yeah, the
staff?
word and staff.
No.
Or,
There's more that's in red.
Yeah.
The second piece that's in red.
Right, we want the words faculty, staff added to both.
Okay.
Lamar
that's fine.
and President.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, Ed.
Item 2, was the request from the Newer Teachers Association, as well as most of the others that were in the room. So I'll give you a minute to read through that. So if you stick with that for a second, basically, you know what, go down a little bit, Mona, so they can see. So instead of having a tiered approach, first offense, second offense, third offense, we're saying it's one expectation and one consequence that goes with it. as opposed to if you do it the second time, if you do it the third time, which was really hard for us to implement and stay true to it. So we agree with the recommendation as stated. However, we would like to add that each school be required to include their cell phone usage guidance in their student handbook. The guidance must provide the manner in which this policy will be enforced in the school, and each school must review the guidance with students on an annual basis. Those are the additions. So that, and I know we would normally put that in a regulation, but this is such a hot topic. We figured just one document where everybody goes to clearly defined. That's our recommendation.
Mr. Lamar.
Fine.
Madam President.
I think this is better than the tiered. I think it's still gonna be very hard to implement and monitor. But I agree that you should have that piece added, that it's reviewed every year. Thank you.
I think if we ask the school administrators to define how they're going to implement it and what they're going to do and work with the students to get them to understand it, we're hoping that may help as well.
I agree with Madam President. Okay, next item.
And for 3, 4, and 5, it's just taking out the first, second, and third offense, and the rest would remain the same. This was hard for the administrators to manage.
Okay. Mr. Lamar.
Fine.
Madam
Thank you.
President.
Fine.
Okay,
All right, moving on to the next policy. Secondary course credit.
5201.
Yep, sure. Okay. So following the same format, item number 1, they added the quarterly common assessments if applicable. We were in agreement with that. Go to 1B. In 1B, we agree, change participation to work, class work instead of class participation. However, we would like to add in compliance with policy 5502 grading for grade 6 through grade 12. There needs to be a link to the grading policy because it clearly articulates formal and informal assignments.
So you want to add this?
Yep.
Mr. Lamar.
Yeah.
Madam President.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Item 2, we are in agreement. They added pre-approved college visits in that language. For item number 3, they would like to say, and do not excuse students from taking the final assessment. We agree with that. However, in order to make that happen and not penalize a student for getting a 0 if they don't do it, we believe that we would like to add the following language, which is in the table that you have. The teacher, student, and parent must schedule a mutually agreed upon date and time for the student to take the assessment. Our fear is that if the student doesn't take that assessment, they would be possibly provided with a lower score or some type of a response to that. So Onyx, do you want to take that? Because you were really worried about that.
Yeah, I was a little concerned because I do think it's important for our students to, and this is also the discussion with the table as well, during policy review. It's important for that conversation to occur. So if I have a student that's ill or there's a family emergency, do we have the reach out that's saying that, are we scheduling a time? The who, what, when, where, of when that student is going to take that assessment or when that's going to be excused. I do support that we need to make sure that our students are assessed, but we also have to ensure that intervention is occurring.
What will be the process of that, of them reaching out to you? I know you read it, but.
So if I have a pre-approved college visit during the date that the administration of the assessment is going to occur, prior to leaving for that particular college visit, I need to sit down with my guidance counselor or the teacher and my parent to say, when I come back, I'm taking that assessment on whatever date at whatever time. And that way we're holding them accountable. And if the student doesn't show for that, then that's different. But at least we told the student, you have an obligation to take this assessment. Here's the date, here's the time.
Mr. Lamar, you good with that?
Yep.
Madam President?
Yes.
Yes. So next item.
Thank you. Item number 4, all students enrolled in a Regents course must sit for the corresponding Regents exam in order to obtain credit. These students will not be taking quarterly common assessments. The Regents scores will appear on the student's transcript. The Regents score will be counted towards the final average. And I'm going to combine number 5 with it. The Regents score will count as 10% of the student's final average. And the NTA is asking us to take out, for these circumstances, student's final grade will be calculated by averaging 4 quarter grades. We're not in agreement with this. And if you look at the packet I gave you, I shared with you 2 documents, one from Commissioner Elia, who recommends that the intention and the way the assessment is designed for the Regents exams should not be used to determine a student's ability to acquire that learning in the classroom. It's formatted very differently. And I also shared with you the frequently asked questions document with regards to Regents exams that came out, I believe it was this year, earlier this year, that also recommends from the state, do not use this as an end of year assessment. So we are not supportive of that.
What's the practice now is the Regents score shows, but it doesn't count towards the average, is that correct?
Yes. I'm sorry, Mr. Lamar. The other thing that we wanted to be sure occurred was that common assessments occur in Regents classes. You want common assessments in your Regents classes just as much as in your non-Regents classes, because the purpose of it is to observe the learning of the student so that I can change my instructional delivery.
Are there somewhere that's not happening? Because I know my son's, the ones he's in, I think he's always had exams.
Dr. Farrell, do the Regents courses have common assessments?
They do, but they have not been administered equitably. And we want to ensure that they are.
So when you say equitable, can you speak to that?
Without there has been some discussion and some controversy over the administration of the common assessments in courses that end in a Regents. And it is our position that they should be administered and will be administered as an indicator of instructional practice, student mastery, and be included within the calculation of students' grades.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell. Madam President, any questions? Comments?
No, I don't have any questions. I think the last sentence should be left in.
Mr. Lamar,
Um,
you good?
I can't speak to whether or not I think that the final grade off of the quarters or the 10% from the Regents is, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I feel about that. Then if you guys feel that that's the way to go, I'm comfortable with it.
We don't.
No, I mean, the 10% thing. Didn't you say that you want the 10% thing, right?
No.
Oh, what do we want?
We want the lined out sentence.
Oh, we want the lined out sentence.
We want no change on that.
Anyone know?
Oh, no, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
All right.
And you don't want the sentence that says the Regents score will count as 10%. That's that.
Yeah, that's in our opinion.
Mr. Mayor, so what also concerns me and discussed is this aligned with how Regencies are handled with special education students. So they're not required to pass the exam. They're simply required to just take it. And then there are a series of different ways in which you get course credit in the absence of the next period. To change that standard for special ed makes no sense. You're actually going to violate regulations if you do so.
Okay. So item number 6,
Yes.
for some secondary courses, the final assessment will be a culminating activity. We absolutely agree with that.
Mr. Lamar.
Yeah.
Madam President.
Yes, but I had questions on the other 2 things that are lined out. What do those mean? No more than 10%, no more than 5%.
Do you want to answer that question, Ms. Peterson?
I can answer that question for Mr. Fortune.
Go ahead.
Let me sure. Okay, so they want it to be a calculation that it's gonna count for 10%. And if it was a semester base grade, it's 5%, so that there's not movement in that. I know one of the recommendations for that from us was also to move that semester calculation to 10% as well. So that it was 10% on, if it was a full year course, or 10% if it was a half year course, because that was correct, a calculation part of the grade.
So what is the 5% on a semester basis? So I get that. That's a half year course.
It's a half year course. It was mathematically 5%. We feel that it should be 10%.
Mhm.
And we feel that it, you know, if it's 10% and 10% and 10%, that's what it should be. A final assessment should count for 10%.
So the words no more than you want taken out.
We agree with that, yes.
So Lauren, you
But
agree?
10%.
I agree.
But we're
And the change
changing
is
the
10%
5
to 10%.
10%, I agree with that as well.
Okay.
I agree also.
Okay. Number 7, for
Yeah.
those courses that do not have a final assessment, but do have quarterly common assessments, each quarterly common assessment will count as 2.5% for a total of 10% toward the student's final average. We're in agreement.
We're in agreement. Mr. Lamar?
Yeah.
Madam President?
Item 8,
Yes.
all secondary courses, the lowest grade on a student's report card will be 55 for the first quarter only. If actual average is below 55, it will be indicated by an amount annotation to the next to the 55. If you go on and continue with that narrative, number 9 is, and they only believe that the lowest grade would be 55 only on the first report card. So what they're basically, what we're being asked to consider is that only for the first marking period would we give a 55 if the student's average was below 55. So we set a threshold of 55 to give the student that opportunity to catch up and not fail. We believe that that should be for all marking periods. That's been a conversation we've had back and forth for several years, probably more than several years. But it's our belief, and I'm not going to tell you my personal opinion on it. I shared with you a document from Edtopia that gave both sides of the story. You know, it was the case for 0, right? So I don't know how you guys feel, but some of our students don't have the same opportunities that other students have. And it's really hard for them to catch up once they fall behind. And setting a bar at 55 still is tough for some of these kids to even get to a passing grade. We want them to stay in school. We want them to do well. Having a student on 2 marking periods get a 10 or a 3, it's devastating to some of them and their families. Putting a 55 and a 55, get shot at the kid saying, I think I can do this. I can put my mind to it and counseling. But by January, if they're that low and they know they can't pass the course, they're going to become behavior problems they possibly would drop out. And I have some concern with that. Onyx, Chris, Andrea, anything? Yeah, Kate?
I think it's important to remember that part of our job is to help students have hope and keep them focused. It's our job to help them maintain rigor and achieve at the level that we expect them to achieve. But if we take away their ability to see a future and have hope moving forward, then we've not accomplished either goal.
Mr. Lamar?
I'm gonna go with the teacher's view this time around. I believe I looked it up and we're the only school in the county that does 55 for all 4 quarters. So,
I'll research that, but I
please,
did take a look at that.
Ms. Peters?
So I also want the board to know that within the student management system, a grade below 55 does show throughout the quarters. This is talking about the posted grade. So if a parent was to go into look, or a student, it does reflect a grade throughout the quarter of what they're actually earning. I know that with the last statement that we're I definitely, in my 15 years of counseling in Rockland County and in Westchester and getting transcripts and evaluating, there's not many school districts that do allow like a 0 or a 1 or 15 to pass through on their records. I have seen transcripts, I will be honest, that do say 50, like they will give a 50, but I have not seen where they are giving students, 20s, 30s. That does not occur.
Madam President?
Chris Baird, and just one last piece of that. So I did work in a district where, for a period of time, they allowed us to go as low as 0. And I worked very closely in my role with guidance counselors. And it was an enormous amount of time trying to convince a student in December, January, who has a 7 average, why they should come back in January. And it led to a lot of unintended consequences. It is very hard just philosophically and mentally, emotionally tell a kid. But you can still, you can't mathematically, you have nowhere to go with that. It's over by the second marking period, because they cannot mathematically catch up when you start that low. 55 is a failure grade. That's, however you feel about that, it's certainly a failure grade, but it doesn't necessarily send a message to a child, you have no reason to come back to school, in general, which is, I saw that happen a lot.
Madam
I
President,
think
and
it is
just
the
speak.
policy.
I'm very conflicted on this one. I think what Onyx just said about, having the student, having the portal, the parent portal where they can look at the grades, having that show the number helps me. Because I think that kids need to know that they're not passing, and they need to know how badly they're not passing or how well they are passing. But I also see what Mr. Vera just said, is that after a number of zeros, you can't pass. You can't, the average just is not possible. So, I think this is gonna be hard. I like the annotation part of this, but the rest of it, I think the lowest grade should only be 55.
Ms. Peterson, you wanted to speak to that?
I just wanted to talk about building interventions with students and families, and especially at the secondary level. It is very difficult if a student you're trying to engage a student in participating in any type of recovery or any type of support. So if mathematically the student feels as if there's no success, then they'll say, I'll just come back next year. And we know that 2 to 3 year month gap of them getting to the next year there can be some life things that occur. Also, the seat time. So though they may not be successful, for them to just be in the building and to be able to access supports will help them social emotionally. So I definitely think that it's important to keep our students engaged in our system of learning. And this allowing something lower than 55 sometimes allows students to check out and say, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this. There's no point. And more apathy can set in. When we really need to be engaged in them and trying to build skills to be successful, maybe it's an evening high school, maybe it's in an ESYP program. It can't just be that you're not successful and we're done for after January. And we're talking January. So if I have a 9th grader that's transitioning, they come in 9th grade, they don't do well the first quarter because of their transition. Maybe the second quarter, they do a little bit better, and then they get a 55, and then they get a 13 or a 20. Let's just say that student can check out for the year. And do we want a 13 or a 14-year-old to check out for the year? And I think that's where interventions and other methods may stop if we allow that to occur.
Okay, so I'm conflicted with this to a degree also, but I like what you said in regards to interventions. Walk me through that. So we see the 55, we say 55, but we say this kid got a 20, 25. And what kind of interventions are in place right there, and doesn't include the parents, and are we coming around to find out why this child is getting a 20, a 15, or a 10? Because there's a lot of stuff that can be going on. Like somebody said something earlier, life patterns, some things are going on in these kids' lives. Are we digging? Are we trying to find out? Because for a kid to get 10 or 15, something's going on. And what does our interventions look like? What services are available to that child?
Well, I think interventions and support are a part of what the structures are of the cohort system. I think that what concerns us about this policy is, can I get those intervention systems moving fast enough before a kid checks out? So we're talking in transition, sometimes when you get referred after the first quarter, you're transitioning, you get your progress report, your first quarter report card. There could be a reach out to a parent, a little bit of an intervention starts, maybe the student falls off again. I have to allow my intervention systems to work, and sometimes it takes longer than 3 or 4 months for a student to get stabilized and feel as if they found the support. We also have to remember that we have larger learning communities. So when you have a larger learning community, sometimes just a student being able to be identified and also being able to make those connections with an adult or a program or a system within, maybe it's the music department, maybe it's athletic, it's especially around transition, it could take a little longer. So I think that for us, we're saying sometimes it does take time for those interventions to be set up, but we do not want to lose the engagement and the participation of the student and the parent.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I think that really speaks to it. I just want to be clear on something, right? So I don't want to presume, and I don't want to mislead the board that by giving 55s, kids re-engage. There are kids that were told to us by the teachers that no matter what we tried, and in spite of the 55s, there are really 0 kids, and they never come to school. And we go after them, we do home visits, we do a whole range of things, right? So I don't want to suggest to the board that this fixes it. But the point is symbolically that like this gives kids hope. That was said earlier, and I just want to reiterate that. When a child is ready to, when we provide those interventions, when they come back to school, we sit them down and they say, all right, I'm going to give this another try. The 55 gives them a reason to try. A 0 gives them no reason to try. So no matter how you're trying to convince those folks. So we have seen demonstrated efforts at the building that have led to students changing their narrative and passing who they had initially started much, with not doing very well at all, and maybe not even coming to school. So, but it doesn't fix this, but at least it doesn't have the unintended consequences that come with very, very low grades. So I just want to be clear on that. I'm not suggesting that this is a panacea. It's just a reason to not give kids more reasons to drop out of school.
Okay, Mr. Lamar.
Again, I still am leaning towards first quarter only, but I mean, I would love to have it first quarter only with, I don't know what we would put in place, but literally like some sort of built-in structure of, we have some sort of intervention that steps in. As soon as that 55 gets flagged, something starts to happen so that throughout that entire second quarter, they've got extra help, whether it be tutoring or whatever. I think that might be a way to go.
I like that. I like that. Ed, Mr. Ford, can we build something in like that? So we can bring it back?
Yep, we can do it, bring it back.
Madam President?
I can agree with that.
Okay.
Just as a technical, are these first reads and adopt, except for the last one?
I would say the first 2, but yeah, the last one we would bring back with your request.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a process.
You good?
Yes.
Well, now we go to item 2.
You're gonna go to 3.
So we'll do 2. It's okay. Can you open up to 411? So we've been talking about this particular policy, and our athletic director has developed an opportunity for an appeal for students who did not meet the attendance criteria. Mona, can you go to the end? It's highlighted in red. So I apologize, this did not get posted yesterday. We fell a little bit behind. So let's take a little bit of time to make sure everyone's on the same page and understands it. And we will respond to any questions you have. So beginning with next year, and it's important for us to make this decision now because this will impact students as they perform over the summer. All students that did not maintain 85% attendance based upon the comprehensive student attendance policy from the previous school year will be placed on extracurricular activity and interscholastic athletic probation at the start of next year. So if they didn't earn the 85% attendance and they want to participate in extracurriculars or in interscholastic athletics, they're going on at attendance probation. This is for fall sports. For fall sports, athletes the previous year fourth quarter attendance will need to be 85% in order to be eligible for fall sports. So the way we're addressing the students' ability to participate in fall sports, they have to have 85% attendance in this particular marking period. And then you can see for the rest what the probation means. So I'll just give you a few minutes to read that. Dr. Farrell and I will try and respond to whatever we believe Mr. Hodge wanted.
And Coach Hodge is on his way. We're coming from a mandatory section meeting in New Paltz, so hopefully he'll make it.
recommendations.
Okay, so, I like it. I think it still has the integrity of the 85%, but it gives children the opportunity to participate under probation. And I like that it's gonna be 90%, which means you have to be intentional in being in school, understanding what the requirements are for attendance. Mr. Lamar?
So if you have, I mean, I like it, big picture, I like it. But if you, just some clarity, if you are not going on probation, as you go through the first marking period, do you have to maintain 85 or 90? If you are not on probation.
You are not on probation.
You're regular.
Regular 85.
You're still 80. The 90 is only a flag when you are on probation, is that correct? Or is 90 the new standard?
No, 85.
85 is our standard.
Okay.
85 is the district standard. The New York State Public High School Athletic Association is 80.
All right.
We're 5% above that.
In my understanding, the 90 is for probationary scholars.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Lamar?
I'd love to have 90 across the board, but this is definitely moving in the right direction. I'm happy with it. I mean, I've said it before. I mean, probation was, I mean, a presentation was given that stated that 10% absence, 10% absence is chronic absenteeism. So I don't know why we're rewarding anybody that's beyond that personally. But, you know, look, we're heading in the right direction. This is the right way to go.
Madam President?
I like the idea about giving kids opportunity, and I think this does give kids opportunity. This is very difficult to understand in this format. For parents and for students, there should be a flow chart, a checklist, something else that's very, very simple, because this, for me, as an educated human being, this was very difficult to follow. So I think it needs to be really simplified for parents and students, because the kids need to understand it to be able to follow it.
Absolutely. And part of that conversation last time, we talked about real-time monitoring. Where kids, when they check in or when they, I know you said it takes months to do that. It's people do.
No.
Oh, you did it?
With this change, you guys saw my mood, kind of like, I like the policy and I like the change, but this is I just finished one element. I would have to go back and kind of readjust it again. So I can give them their what's currently available in the student and parent portal is their prior year ABA, their credits, their behavior, their current attendance, and if there's any concerns academically. I have that currently in there.
Okay.
What's not in there is this. So I would either have to create something for those students that are appealed. I have to think about how we can do it. But I'm always a believer in technology. Anything can be done. But I think, and I can give the information for Mr. Hodge for those students that don't meet the criteria that are probationary eligible. I could do that in a way. I'm gonna think of how I can do that, but I think it's important. I do agree with Mrs. Nail, like the parents have to have it in a clear way. So if you do not meet the 85, you have to earn 90 in the first one.
So, and make it clear for everyone, this is not just athletes. These are kids that participate in extracurricular activities.
Right.
So can we stress it to parents? Can we stress it district-wide? This is the requirements that you must meet, and parents need to understand what these requirements are too. It needs to be, I'm not gonna use that phrase. It needs to be simple and stupid.
I agree.
KISS.
Like a if-then statement.
Yeah.
If your child has this, then this will happen,
Yes.
period.
Flow chart.
And they need
This,
to understand
this.
and know.
If they do this, they'll be fine. If they do this, they are not.
That's good.
Okay.
Is it acceptable to develop a regulation behind the policy that does that?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Lamar? Yes.
There's a,
Okay. Looking forward to it.
next.
Sorry. I was thinking of this.
So the next piece, Ms. May has shared with us an update to our homebound instruction policy, and Mr. Shaw is here to share a few things about that. And then I do have a question, David.
Okay, so historically, going back decades, it's always been 2 hours of instruction, secondary, 1 hour elementary. There are two major changes that will be immediate for next year. It'll be 2 hours elementary, 3 hours secondary for students with IEPs and students with a medical need, medically fragile students. Commissioner hasn't yet changed the general rule for suspension-based home instruction to be 2 and 3 hours, although that's a recommendation. Of course, that's economic consequences. The new regulations also have an interactive process between the school medical director and the doctors of the students. It's a checkoff to make sure that there's a real need, so that would be a highlight as well. The provision of home, hospital, or institutional instruction, who does it? This draft policy indicates it could be done through either your staff, a BOCES contract, or a hospital or institution. I think it'll be important to know what the status quo is right now. Who's doing this home and hospital instruction? That's my question.
It's, in-house, it's teachers doing it after school.
Okay, and then when it's at a hospital or an institution, do we contract with them for that?
We pay them to do it.
Yes.
Okay, so this policy draft says are through BOCES, and that could be controversial. So I just bring that to your attention.
Okay.
We have other matters on the MTA about using BOCES services.
Ms. Lamar, question, comments?
Not particularly, no.
We're looking to see if the times were changed.
David, can you look at the policy and see if the times were, the number of hours were changed? Because I don't see that change.
You know, I don't see it.
At the elementary level, go back to where we were.
Is that the?
My computer died, so I'm trying to use this thing.
Yeah,
and it's not working. That's for out schools. but
It just says the number of hours.
Well, you know what, it's in accordance with the education law in the very beginning, so we know the ed law now. We could specify if we
Yeah,
want.
well, I only say that because
Yeah.
under number 3A says at the elementary level, 5 hours, at the secondary level, 10. And then it distinguishes between students with disabilities and suspension. I think 3A and 3B might need to reflect the new hours since we.
2A under requirements has actual hours listed.
10 hours of structure per week.
Right.
Right, it's gotta be updated.
3A, that we're talking, 3A and B, right?
Where were you, Mr. Lamar? Tell me again.
2A,
Go this way.
right there.
Thank you.
That is correct.
That's correct.
So, Mr. Howard.
Madam President.
Mr. Shaw said something that was very important. And there's a differentiation now between students who are sick or awaiting other placement and students who are suspended. And in some cases, they can go to RISE, correct?
For suspension.
But does RISE have the required number of hours if we were to adjust the hours?
We would, once the regulation changed, we would have to change the hours for RISE, and then we'd have to find out how we're gonna compensate.
But the law doesn't
Not yet.
say for suspended students.
Not yet.
So I think that it's something that we would be reasonable if we looked at that and got that in place ahead of time.
Be proactive.
Only because in looking at kids that are suspended, 1 hour a day for elementary kids is certainly not enough. And
Absolutely.
2 hours a day for middle school and high school kids is not enough. It's just not enough time.
So I'd like to do some research on it and do some exploring to make sure that we would have staffing to be able to do 3 hours after working a full day at the secondary level, because I don't want to put something in policy that we can't implement until we have to. Because I would worry that it would compromise our recruitment.
I think that's fine.
I still think that for suspensions, I think if there's a way to do it, and I know I brought it up previously, and I believe the superintendent said that it would be somehow because suspended students can't be in the building, or they can't be on school grounds if they've been suspended, but I don't know why we can't have in-school suspensions that fit the parameters of the out-of-school suspensions we're doing and have them sitting in a room all day at a computer, watching the live stream of the class they would have been sitting in the first place. So they are not missing out on anything and they're getting the full instruction of the full day.
Understood.
That, I don't know why they go home and they've only got to get on the computer for 3 hours and goof off the rest of the day. That's not a suspension. That's a vacation.
So Ed, you'll come back with that.
We will research that, absolutely.
So this one's on hold.
No, this one's a go because the regulation hasn't changed for suspension. But we have to get in compliance with the current students pending placement and.
Well, you have no choice but to be in compliance. It's a matter of whether you have that administrative guidance document.
The first reading
First
draft.
read it out.
So we have 3 policies for Tuesday.
Yes.
Yeah, if it's for a compliance thing, yeah.
Or.
But I would like to, I think that would be something to look into.
Absolutely. We'll do that.
Thank you.
I think we're done.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
I do have a question.
Oh.
With regards to the kids that are, in the credit accrual or reclamation, or the kids that are getting the 55, getting the benefit of the 55, for whatever period. Do we have any data that shows how many of those kids are not reading at grade level? Because that could be why we're finding ourselves in that situation, those situations.
Be more specific with that.
Well, here's an example. Like, what if we've got a kid that's going to do credit recovery at home on a computer and he can't read? What's on the screen? I mean, that's just the most extreme, but that's my question, you know?
When you said, do we have any data?
Well, do we have,
So I know what to pull.
is there a way to correlate? I know it's a lot of data, but I mean, is there a way to correlate the kids that aren't reading on level with the kids? Can we see what the correlation is between those kids and the kids that we are putting in these situations that are?
So you want us to analyze the students that are receiving the 55 as the lowest score to determine why are they receiving
That, well,
55
yeah.
as the lowest score, and trying to see if we have any patterns or trends around that, whether it's lack of study skills or home environment where they have to work full-time, whether it's
Sure.
literacy, whether it's, they don't have the technology resources, all those types of things you want us to research.
Well,
Which is fine. I'm just trying to.
It could be any number, right? And it could be any number.
So it might not be just.
Specifically, the idea of what popped in my head, not for the 55 thing, but for the credit reclamation thing.
Oh, for credit.
That was the one that I was initially interested in.
Exactly.
I just expanded.
Okay.
Like,
I got you. We're working on your chronic absenteeism data right now.
Thank you.
That's one that I really, really want. All those things.